Well, the virus has now killed more than 100 people in China, and new cases have been confirmed around the world.
So you don't want to frighten the American public.
France and South Korea have also got evacuation plans.
But you need to prepare for and assume
strongly warning Americans to avoid all non-essential travel to China.
That this is going to be a real serious problem.
France, Australia, Canada, the US, Singapore, Cambodia, Vietnam, the list goes on.
Health officials are investigating more than 100 possible cases in the US.
Germany, a man has contracted the virus.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
Japan, where a bus driver contracted the virus.
Coronavirus has killed more than 100 people there and infected more than 4,500.
We have to prepare for the worst, always, because if you don't and the worst happens.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We must strictly and fully enforce our law and have no tolerance for anarchy and no tolerance, zero, for violence. Anyone who breaks the law should be arrested, prosecuted, and punished. This includes targeting law enforcement efforts to focus on Antifa, the left-wing domestic terror organization. The mission of Antifa is to spread terror in the U.S. population with the goal of getting Americans to give up to their agenda. This is how terrorist organizations have always operated. That's not the easy path. That's a very dangerous path. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. You remember pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. That was the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter. I said, that's a terrible name. It's so discriminatory. It's bad for black people. It's bad for everybody. And all of a sudden it becomes like sort of, although now if you look, it's going way down because people are tired of this stuff, what's going on, the Black Lives Matter. If you look at what's going on with the bats and a lot of thugs.
Running through D.C. last night.
Oh, it's terrible what's going on.
Why haven't we seen the leaders of Antifa and BLM arrested and charged for conspiracy under, say, RICO, like the heads of the mafia families were?
Well, this is something I've talked to the AG personally about, and I know that they are working on it. Look, we've seen about 300 arrests across this country regarding civil unrest and protesting, violent protesting, I would say, criminal protesting, criminal rioting occur. About 300 arrests. About a third of those or 100 of those arrests have been in Portland specifically, and I know the Department of Justice has charged about 74 or 75 individuals there in Portland with different federal crimes, and we'll continue to see how those investigations are going. Department of Justice is also targeting and investigating the head of these organizations, the individuals that are paying for these individuals to move across the country. What we know, Tucker, is that we have seen groups and individuals move from Portland to other parts of the country.
Right.
We had about 175 arrests in Kenosha. Almost 100 of them were from out of state. So we know they're moving around. We've seen them in D.C., in Sacramento, and elsewhere. They're organized. We've seen similar tactics being used from Portland and other cities across the country as well. So we know that there's organization. I know the Department of Justice is also looking at that as well.
Why haven't we seen the leaders of Antifa and
Okay, welcome to the War Room Live from the nation's capital. It's Tuesday, the 1st of September, year of our Lord 2020. You're in episode 363. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, America's Voice, on Newsmax TV. Chris Ruddy's organization now in 70 million homes. I think 14 million homes with America's Voice. Also subtitled in Mandarin later in the day on G News and GTV. And on our podcast, approaching 13.5 million downloads. So we're one of the largest shows in podcast land, and we're ubiquitous everywhere else on Facebook, Pluto, Roku. Want to get to it. We've got a old hand you can see for those watching on television right now. Dr. Stephen Hatfield, adjunct professor over at George Washington. From the early days of the show, author of 3 Seconds to Midnight, that knows everything about pandemics, one of the smartest guys in the country, a former fellow at Oxford University, at Fort Detrick, and NIH. He will be here for the entire hour, but really joining us in the second half to go through hydroxychloroquine, all the latest on vaccines, everything about where this pandemic starts. And we know he's an audience favorite from the first week of the show when he started talking about all the technicalities. I want to bring in now, though, we got to get to the politics. Remember, this show is about a pandemic that triggered an economic crisis, that triggered a capital markets crisis, that now has a geopolitical confrontation between the Chinese Communist Party and the Alliance of Liberty. We're going to get to all that today. I want to bring in now a very special guest, Chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Ralph Reed, not only one of the leaders of the evangelical Christian movement in our country, but one of the smartest political strategists around. Raheem Gassam, Jack Maxey, in studio today. Ralph, thank you very much for joining us on War Room Pandemic today. The president's going to leave here shortly and head to Kenosha. You saw from those initial clips, and I think we got Biden. We can get later in the show. You got this thing's now getting down to the bid and the ask on safety and law and order versus what the Democrats represent. How do you're one of the smartest guys out there about the politics of it all, but pull back the camera for a second about the country. Where do you think we are right now with this anarchy and clearly this kind of cultural Marxism that's seeped into this protest movement?
Yeah, Steve, I think that political strategists and campaigns are a little bit like generals who refight the last war. And you know this better than anybody because you were at the helm in 2016 at the Trump campaign, that in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, other states as well, it was a national phenomenon. But because of the closeness of the margin in those states, an African-American turnout that was well below the 2012 baseline, Democrats believe was responsible for them losing the upper midterm. We could debate whether that's true or not. For example, in Wisconsin, Trump got about the same number of votes that Romney did 4 years earlier. Give or take a couple of thousand votes. Romney lost Wisconsin by 1 million votes. Trump won it by 22,000. There were 47,000 fewer African-American votes cast in Milwaukee alone compared to the 2012 baseline. So the strategy by the Biden campaign from day one was to energize and turn out that vote. It was behind the Clyburn endorsement. It was behind the initial video in which he lied about what the president said during Charlottesville. It was behind the selection of Kamala Harris. And it was behind him doubling down on the left-wing anarchist agenda of BLM and others. Because he felt that if he could fix that problem, that he had one pick for the Oval Office. The problem with that, Steve, is that in politics, there's a Newtonian law of every action generating an equal or greater reaction. And when he was thunderously silent about the violence, the looting, the riot, the extreme Marxism, the anarchism, the destruction, Steve, of African-American-owned businesses in these cities, and the defunding police agenda, which was a corollary to that, which Biden expressed support for on multiple occasions, what happened then is lots of law-abiding, God-fearing, patriotic Americans of all colors and all ethnicities went, if that's what he's offering as the alternative, count me out. And once the president and his campaign laid down a strong marker on this, he began to see movement. Biden is now bleeding, and that's why you see him finally coming out of the basement. It's kind of a long answer, but that's what I think has happened.
Let's go to, they had an entire week. They made the first part of the case, right? The prosecution's case, and then the president comes in for the defense, as traditional in our system. Those 4 days, encapped by his speech. This is Biden's speech. Do you think? What did you think the Democrats were trying to accomplish, and what do you think they actually accomplished when they had 4 straight days to be able to address and talk to the American people?
I think it was of a piece of what I was just talking about. I think that they overplayed their hand with regard to addressing issues of social justice and racial discrimination, and all of us oppose discrimination based on race. All of us oppose those few that significant minority of cops that are engaged in inappropriate behavior or brutality or mistreatment of offenders. The president's made that abundantly clear. But they didn't just go there. They talked about restructuring the economy, restructuring society, $4 trillion in new taxes, Green New Deal, all this designed to energize the left. And I think most glaringly in a act of political malpractice that is on the level of putting Michael Dukakis in the tank in 88, or having Mondale in 84 say, whoever people voted for, we're going to raise their taxes. We won't tell you I just did. Joe Biden never, in 4 days, not a single speaker, condemned the bankrupting of Martin Luther King's dream of racial equality and reconciliation by advocating violence. Martin Luther King was never for violence. He was never for rioting. He called it, and I quote, the language of the herd. It violated his Christian faith. It violated his philosophy of nonviolent resistance. And it violated his understanding of the civility and brotherhood and sisterhood of the American experiment. And by having 4 days and never once uttering a line about that, and only so belatedly after the Trump campaign and the Republican National Convention repeatedly hammered him, Biden has shown his true priorities, his true colors, and is the only way he can get away with that is if the Trump campaign were to let him. And I just don't see that happening.
I want to go to, before we go to break, we got about 2 minutes. I want to get your response to the president's comments that, elements of Black Lives Matter is Marxist, that Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization. We have said on the show now for, I think, Raheem, since this started 2 or 3 months ago, that this is like the Cultural Revolution. This is just exactly like the Red Guard in the Mao's Red Guard Cultural Revolution, like the French Revolution. What say you, Ralph?
Well, I can only speak for my organization, Faith and Freedom, and we have said that we do believe that Black lives matter, but we believe all African-American lives matter. That means school choice. It means ending the genocide of abortion, which disproportionately takes the lives of innocent Black children. We believe it involves economic opportunity, like the Opportunity Zone. We do not support and do not countenance the radical anti-family agenda of BLM. It's anti-free market. It's anti-family. It calls for the destruction of the nuclear family. And you know that our organization strongly supports the nuclear family as the most successful department of human resources ever devised. So we're opposed to all those things, and I think the president was very right to point out what the true philosophy is.
Real quickly, what about the Secretary Wolf talking about using the RICO statute and others to start to round up the Antifa anarchists? What's your guys' position on that?
Well, I think he said in the sound bites he played, and this has been pointed out by others, that it appears that the overwhelming majority of people who are being arrested in these areas of civil discord and rioting are moving around the country. We ought to know who's paying for it. We ought to know who's behind it. And this is a criminal enterprise. And I'm not a prosecutor, so I'll defer to DOJ what the best strategy is. But I don't know why you couldn't use the RICO statute. You're using the wires and you're using network in order to a criminal enterprise. Exactly what that statute is there for.
Ralph, we'd appreciate if you hung on for the next. We want to talk about the tactics and the practicality. You're one of the best ground game guys in the country, so we want to return with Ralph Reed, the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. I understand that it was a little choppy, but I want to get all the feedback. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. If you're in the live stream, want to hear what you have to say. We got Dr. Stephen Hatfield here at the bottom of the hour. He's going to be walking through all of his detailed analysis of everything dealing with the pandemic side of this. He's one of the top authorities in the country, the author of 3 Seconds to Midnight, and just absolutely brilliant. Got the show off to a big bang back in January and early February before he went on assignment. So glad to see him back here. Raheem Kassam, Jack Maxey. Make sure hashtag War and Pandemic. Jack, what have we got? People lighting this thing up already?
People are loving it, yeah. We're on it. We're so thankful for our audience who constantly give us great ideas to pursue.
And we're going to come back and talk about Ralph Reed, about how this vote's actually going to go down technically, how people are going to get out, how you got to get motivated to get your friends out. Raheem Kassam, Jack Maxey, T. Bennett, back in a moment.
The hottest new razor is taking the men's grooming world by storm. And if you don't have it, you need it. MicroTouch Solo, the hyper-advanced full-body razor that trims, shapes, edges, and even shaves with micro-precision. And it's totally safe to the touch. Go solo for full-body control with one tool. No nicks, bumps, or ingrown hairs. Edge beards and goatees with one touch. Clean your neck, barber shop perfect. And check this out. Snap on the guide to tame growth and perfectly shape your full beard. And keep new growth stubble trimmed exactly to your style. And look, the Solo Full Body Groomer trims precisely the length of hair you want. Snap off the guide and remove unwanted hair anywhere in seconds. What makes Solo different than your ordinary razor? Dual-sided German stainless steel blade. Shave up or down at 200 microstrokes per second. The Ultra Flex pivoting head contours perfectly to you for precise results. 3 custom grooming guides for control of exact length and shape. And a built-in LED light so you never miss a spot. Solo is so precise, you need no creams, no soaps, and no water. Ditch the old man clippers and toss the scissors. You've got to go solo. Call 1-800-709-9777 or go online at microtouchsolo.com and get yours now for only $19.99. Complete with German stainless steel blade, pivoting head, built-in spotlight, and 3 custom grooming guides. Everything you see here for just $19.99. The all-new MicroTouch Solo Full Body Groomer. The one tool that does it all.
Time for new reading glasses? Go to Readers.com. With hundreds of styles to choose from, Readers.com has reading glasses hard to find in stores, like bifocal style readers, reading sunglasses, and computer readers. Choose from hundreds of fashionable styles and colors for under $20, all backed by our happiness guarantee. Go to Readers.com now and enter this exclusive TV coupon code at checkout to save up to 40%. That's Readers.com.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Donald Trump has been a toxic presence in our nation for 4 years, poisoning how we talk to one another, poisoning how we treat one another, poisoning the values this nation has always held dear, poisoning our very democracy. Now, in just a little over 60 days, we have a decision to make. Will we rid ourselves of this toxin, or will we make a permanent part? We make it a permanent part of our nation's character.
Okay, I don't know if this is the most important election in our lifetime, but I'm going to tell you one thing. It's going to be the nastiest. This is going to be nastier than 1860. Here you have a guy running for president of the United States. He's not talking about his opponent's policies. He's not saying he's toxic. They also, Hillary Clinton last week said we're never going to concede, right? You shouldn't concede. Big news coming out of, is it Axios, Raheem Kassam?
Yeah, that's right. Axios has this exclusive up right now from a group called Hawkfish. Hawkfish being a top Democratic data and analytics firm. They gave Axios on HBO an interview and said it was highly likely that President Trump will appear to have won big, potentially in a landslide on election night, even if he ultimately loses when all votes are counted. And they go on to explain why this is. They talk about the vote by mail, the weeks to count these up. And it actually goes back to what Nigel Farage told me in one of our first National Pulse shows over a week ago. he said the early mail-in voting is a dark cloud on the horizon for this U.S. election.
This goes to Podesta's. This thing you guys broke on Daily Mail about on National Pulse about the Podesta operation and the war game they're running. We're going to get to all that a little later in the show. I want to go back now to Ralph Reed. So, Ralph, back to the practicality of this. First off, Ralph, have you ever seen a more a tougher, nastier environment than we have right now in politics, and particularly as we hurtle towards the run-up to the 2020 election? Where do you think we stand as a society and a culture, given the heat and the nastiness, particularly what the Democrats are coming out with about what they're saying about President Trump?
I think in my lifetime, Steve, the only analog that I can come up with is 1968. When you had the riots in Chicago, you had the Vietnam War going on. You had a very close election that was ultimately decided by 500,000 votes out of 68 million cast. But there's been nothing on that level, and I think it is almost a given at this point that Biden and his allies say and do whatever is necessary to win this election. They'll destroy any character. They'll smear any reputation. They'll tell it lie. There's nothing that they're not going to do. And I think our side needs to understand that that's the environment we're in. We need to be prepared through our communications and rapid response capability to make sure that those lies don't go unanswered. We need to not make the mistake of thinking that people will not believe things that are not true if they're not answered. And if we don't get the truth out about this president's record and his plans for the next 4 years, they will believe it. So we've got a big job to do in the next 62 days, and I think if we do it, I think the president will be reelected.
How do you actually get what are you guys doing? Because you're, I think, one of the best around the practicality of it. This is going to be a bring out your side election, right? A base plus election for both sides. How are you going to, what are you recommending, and how are you going to get out the vote? How are we going to get every potential Trump voter out there to actually own their vote, either through mail-in or get to the polls? What are you guys working on at the Faith and Freedom Coalition?
Well, in 2016, Steve, we knocked on 1 million doors in about 18 states. We, through this week, will have reached 1 million faith-based voters at their doors as we did by Election Day 4 years ago. Our effort this cycle will be 3 to 4 times the size of what we did in 2016. In addition to that, we've had the advent of SMS texting capability. About 60% of the voters that we're seeking to contact, we have their mobile phones. 75% of them are on Facebook or other social media platforms. And, Steve, I'm just a big believer that campaigns kind of lost their way at the peak of the television era, thinking that you could win elections and move public opinion by just putting up a 30-second TV ad. Clearly in this day of $5, $6, $7, $8 billion presidential elections, that's no longer the case. There are now so many ads up already, Steve, in these battleground states that by the time you get to early October, voters are just going to tune it out. They will have seen thousands of these ads. The way you win elections today is the same way you won them before the advent of the internet, television, or radio. It's person to person, it's face to face, it's door to door. If we do our job on the ground, we'll turn out a record number of faith-based and conservative voters. And by the way, I just want to add, Steve, parenthetically, we are not neglecting minority communities or neighborhoods at all. I've had 40 paid staffers in key states going to Hispanic apartment complexes and neighborhoods. We're doing the same in African-American neighborhoods in key states. And you know what? When you ask for people's support, you get it. And I'm not in the prediction business, but the polling indicates that the president's going to overperform among both blacks and Hispanics, and I think he will.
What is your boots on the ground? What do they tell you about the heat out there? Are people responding to the Trump message? I mean, they feel that people are energized because we went through a period of time earlier this summer or during the beginning of this pandemic when people were quite listless. Where do you think? What is your staff that's out there? What do they tell you? Where are we now?
We're in a great place. First of all, in spite of the pandemic, we've had no problem staffing up. We have about 1,000 staff on the ground right now, which is about 2/3 as many as the National Party has. There's no precedent for that in modern political history. And we've still got 62 days to go. We're still staffing up in some of these states. At the door, people are enthusiastic. Some are reticent to participate in a survey because of COVID. But they're there. They're thanking us for the literature. And the other thing that I will tell you is that the intensity is off the charts. 92 to 95% of them tell us they're planning on voting. We're obviously going to be following up with them with absentee and early voting where that's relevant. The other thing that I can tell you, without getting into specific numbers, which are proprietary, that is encouraging to me, I'm not an expert on this, but the number one issue that we're encountering in these door-to-door encounters, Steve, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of them in key states, is the economy. And it's not even close. They say the most important issue facing them is getting this economy back to where it was pre-COVID, creating jobs, and restoring American economic greatness. And I think that that is an issue that works to Donald Trump's strength.
Ralph, last thing, we've got about 2 minutes left. Our audience is a big, deplorable activist audience. For a call to action, how can people out there help you? How can they get more engaged? How they can get more involved? Where should they go? What should they look at? What should they log on to?
They should go to FF Coalition. FF is in Faith and Freedom. FFcoalition.com. Sign up. We've got our Road to Majority Policy Conference on September 30th through October 2nd in Atlanta. We're going to have a huge crowd there. I can't speak for the president or vice president, but they've each come 5 or 6 times in the past, and they are invited. If people want to help contact voters by going door-to-door or making phone calls, we have door-to-door operations and phone banks operating in 21 states right now. They can either look up their state Faith and Freedom organization by Googling it or searching for it, or they can contact us at ffcoalition.com, and we'll put them in touch with the right field teams in the right state.
Ralph Reed, the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. So the conference this year is down in Atlanta, not in Washington. Can people still get tickets? Can our audience, still participate online? Tell us about the conference quickly.
Yeah, Road to Majority is our annual policy conference. In the past, we've had the president, the vice president, multiple cabinet officials, key conservative and faith leaders, and some of our best fighters in the House and the Senate. I really encourage people to go to our website, ffcoalition.com. We had to move it out of D.C. just because it was very difficult to work with city authorities on having this event. But we're going to operate within all the appropriate public health protocols, but we're going to have a big crowd, and I think it's going to give us a big surge. And I will also tell you, Steve, that on at least 1 or 2 of those days, we're going to have buses lined up in front of the hotels. And during breaks in the program, we're going to take people to key neighborhoods in the Atlanta suburbs to knock on doors. We have 2 of the top 5 or 6 Senate races in the country here, and we're in play in the presidential race. And we have 2 of the top 20 congressional races in the country. So we're all about ground game. We're going to use this conference as a springboard to have the most effective ground game, the most effective get-out-the-vote effort directed at voters of faith in modern American political history.
Ralph Reed, you're an American hero and a great patriot. I want to thank you for joining us today to give us an update on your perspective and the activities of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to come back in a second. Dr. Stephen Halfeld, but we're going to summarize Ralph Reed's visit next.
Hi, Hunter Ellis here for Night Hero Binoculars by Atomic Beam. These binoculars let you see anything, even in pitch black darkness. Gotcha. The secrets are powerful wide-angle atomic beam laser that reveals objects up to 150 yards away, hidden by darkness. During the day, Night Hero gives you 10 times magnification, and when the sun goes down, press the Night Bright button to see clearly in the dark. Light up garbage-eating critters, or spot thieves before they even get close. Call or click now and get Night Hero binoculars with laser illumination technology for just $39.99. You'll also get a protective carrying case, yours free. Order right now and you can double it. Plus, get our best-selling atomic beam flashlight, just pay separate fee. We'll even ship them to you free. You can get it all, but you have to order now.
Call 1-800-788-1008. That's 1-800-788-1008. Or visit buynighthero.com. That's buynighthero.com. Order now.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now to give you deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but also my mattress toppers, sheets, and so much more. For example, you can get body pillows regularly $89.99, only $29.99 with your promo code. With our 60-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Sleep well, America!
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Frustrated with heavy rubber hoses that always get tangled and easily kink? Introducing the Bionic Flex Pro hose, the super strong, super tough hose that's ultra light as well. Run over an ordinary hose and it'll easily burst, but the Bionic Flex Pro hose stays intact no matter what runs over it, because its reinforced drag-resistant commercial-grade outer polyester weave makes it tougher and stronger than ever. And its solid brass fittings are crush-proof too. Ordinary hoses kink easily and stop working, but the Bionic Flex Pro hose never kinks. It just keeps flowing strong. And while regular hoses easily get tangled, the Bionic Flex Pro hose is tangle-proof. You can get the 25-foot Bionic Flex Pro hose for just $19.95 with free shipping. But wait, order today and we'll upgrade your order to a 50-foot Bionic Flex Pro hose. Just pay a separate fee, and shipping is still free. Go now.
Call 1-800-313-8062.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I tell you what, of those that go out to vote on November the 3rd, Trump will win the majority of votes in the Electoral College. Of that, I have absolutely no doubt about it. Why? Because the Trump base are still very highly motivated. And if you look at Biden, right, and there's a truth here that Obama won't admit, that Clinton won't admit, that none of them will admit. The truth is Biden isn't up to it. He's past it. He's what in English terms I would call a duffer. He's not up to scratch. He's not fit for high office. Everyone knows it, but no one dares say it. But the voters, when you ask people who are declared and say they'll vote Biden, when you ask them why, over half of them say, because I don't like the other bloke. That means enthusiasm levels for Biden are very, very low. And that means on polling day, people who support Trump will go and vote. People who support Biden just won't go out and do so in the same numbers. So on the day, he'll win the vote. My worry, and you just touched on it, my worry is this early mail-in voting. I've seen postal voting, the British equivalent of this, abused wholesale in the United Kingdom to the advantage of the left. And, the worst scenario of all is we get, on the morning of the 4th of November, Trump looks like the winner. And then over the course of the next 10 days, all these mail-in votes are counted and the result gets reversed. And Trump is quite right to raise a flag and to say this is not how elections should be conducted because they're open to abuse. So, yes, I think he'll win, but to me, the early mail-in voting is potentially quite a dark cloud on the horizon.
And we have the Bloomberg, what is it, Hawkfish?
Yeah,
they're the most sophisticated, one of the most sophisticated. They're putting this out there right now, right? But Bloomberg would not allow those guys to talk unless they're telling the Democrats, hey, once you be all over this mail-in vote, there's what happened you just had a breaking thing in Georgia?
A judge in Atlanta, Georgia has declared that every single ballot that arrives and gets post-stamped by the date of the election.
Not arrives, post-stamped.
Post-stamped, yeah. Well, gets to the post office and gets stamped with the date of the election. All of those ballots will be counted. So we know that you're not going to get results for Georgia on election night.
And that was 12 days ago when I interviewed Nigel about that particular issue. And I do think that them releasing this kind of information now, the Hawkfish team, which is funded by Michael Bloomberg, does work for the Democratic National
Enormously
Committee.
Sophisticated data operation.
Very, very sophisticated operation. This Democratic data and analytics firm, they're coming out and they're saying that it may look like Trump wins in a potential landslide on election night, and then weeks later it will emerge that he hadn't won. We've talked about this on this show before, and Nigel talked about it on the National Pulse 2 weeks ago, and I think it's intentional that they're leaking this story out now, because they know we know, and they now have to get ahead of it.
Very dangerous stuff, right? This is why we're going to try to get Bill McGinley back on, Vish. Let's get McGinley and Jim Schultz and these guys on tomorrow. We got to talk about owning your vote. This is why everybody in the audience, right? This is an action-oriented show. That's what we call the War Room. It's not to just sit there and think about the theories of this and what the inside baseball is and what people think about it. Action, action, action. The action you have to take. McGinley had two things, and we've already had a number of audience members come back to us. Don't be a poll watcher. Go sign up to be an election official. Get in the room. Get in the room, not where they're watching the polls, but where the ballots are counted. Okay, you need to sign up to be an election official. Number two, you need to go to places like FF Coalition, Faith and Freedom Coalition. I'm not telling you you've got to choose them and sign up, but there are a couple of three very prominent get out the vote operations, right? We will have these, try to have one on every day. Ralph Reed is a serious player. The door knocking they're doing, the phone banks they're doing. You must turn out everybody you know. Right? You've got, and first off, get them registered to vote right now. If you got people out there and not registered to vote, get registered to vote now and turn your vote out. Bill McGinley says you got to own your vote if you're going to do mail-in or whatever. But this is, and the rules and regulations are still very up in the air. They're kind of, but we got to get past that. You got to know what the rules and regulations are for you. You got to own it. You got to make sure your friends own it, the other supporters own it. And you just saw a judge just saying, hey, right now it's marked by, I guess, midnight of the of voting day, and the way the U.S. mail works. When does that come in? 3 days later, 4 days later. This is going to be. We're going to be on, like I said, in this election. November 3rd is not election day. It's the last day of the election, and that's when, if at 10 o'clock at night on election night, President Trump is ahead. And Podesta and those guys kick into their, they're telling people, just get us past midnight without AP declaring this guy the winner, right? With enough things out there, and we'll kick into this. And that's not conspiracy theory. The New York Times reported that, right?
They've been very clear about it everywhere. The breadcrumbs have been laid here for everyone to see, and I can't understand why people aren't firing off bigger warnings over this. Apart from here in the War Room and on the National Pulse, it's very clear, this pattern that they're leaving of, hey, we're going to found this Transition Integrity Project. This is backed by the Soros Open Society Institutes and the Berggruen Institute, linked with the Chinese Communist Party. These two groups held this war game. In the war game, John Podesta played Biden. As Biden, he refused to concede. We now hear
where did we hear that from? Hillary Clinton.
From Hillary? No, well, Hillary Clinton came out a week later and said, oh, this is my suggestion, as if she's totally removed from Podesta and this whole project and everything that went down there. That's very clear. And I don't understand why somebody has to put the question to the Associated Press as well and say, do you commit right now to making a call immediately after the election to find out who wins? Because my fear is they opt out of making a call entirely.
Well, the other thing that I think people are missing here, too, I find it very odd that we're going to have this mail-in voting, and in the midst of it, the letter carriers union comes out in total support of Biden. I mean, could you imagine this was the 1968 election, and we get the Teamsters to count the ballots or make sure they get delivered in a timely fashion? This is open season on fraud here.
Okay, let's now turn. We're going to get back to all this in the next hour, but let's now turn to pandemic, the thing that started this show, and it's really what's caused. It's caused the mail-in ballot situation, et cetera. Now we're going to bring in Dr. Stephen Hadfield, Jack Maxey. I know we got a ton of topics we want to go through. Why don't we start to rip on welcoming back into the war room in his rightful place? I think he was actually sat next to me at the. This is when Jack. Jack, I think you were still actually. You and Mans were actually in the war room.
You and me did the start of the thing.
Okay,
and
fine.
Hadfield sat there.
Yeah. Then Miller came back. Oh, then that's when we rolled up the 2020 show into this. Took the geniuses of Raheem Kassam and Jason Miller, got them into the pandemic. Dr. Hadfield, when we first started this, you'd written the book. It just came out. Your book came out, I think, in the fall of 2019, and very prescient, right? You did the history of the pandemics, 3 seconds to midnight, but you were a warning about biological warfare. We've had Dr. Yan, defectors, people saying that this is man-enhanced, that this did not, you got a lot of people said, hey, it just came out of a bat cave. Other people saying, no, it couldn't possibly happen. As you look back over the 9 months we've had this right now, and I guess you could actually say from December or to November, where do you think we stand with getting into the Wuhan lab? Why has the WHO, why are they kowtowing to the Chinese Communist Party? You've had Pompeo and others say we need to put together an international group that goes there and gets answers. Why have we not gotten the Chinese Communist Party to actually allow the top people in the world in there to review this?
I don't have a clue. You
gotta get closer to that mic.
It's all about.
This is the same problem. He hadn't learned anything in 9 months. Same problem we had at the beginning of the show.
Scary. Okay, yeah. It's like no. You'll have to ask the Chinese. It should.
Well,
be
I know their answer is we don't need you over here. Just believe us. It is what it is, right?
It should be a simple matter to come in and the United States open their laboratories. This shouldn't be an issue.
But these P4 labs, isn't by treaty? I mean, they're a signatory to the Biological Weapons Treaty. Don't we have a right? And the French are supposed to oversee this. When this thing was built, isn't it some sort of condition precedent of their activities in this that they have to make it open? And I realize, you don't. You're like us. You don't think much of WHO, but don't they have an obligation to open these things up for inspection?
You would think there's a moral obligation.
What's the Chinese Communist Party? I don't care about moral obligations. No, that's not going to. No.
What I'm saying is, when there's a suspicion, wouldn't you want to clear your name and clear the Institute's name?
Of course.
Yeah, but they don't. But the fact is, they probably got gain of function, all these type of experiments. So they're not a full opening. If you went in there today, they scrub immediately. They scrub the fresh market. If you went in there today, if you, Dr. Hadfield, led a team with others, right, and got into Wuhan today, what would be your protocol? What would you go through? Who would you want to talk to? What would you want to see? What would you do?
You mean an inspection?
No, go for dinner. Yes, an inspection. You didn't get quicker. You did not get quicker on your.
He's the only guy who's been working this time.
Yeah.
There's a protocol you go through, and you start months before the incident. You look at orders for materials and equipment. You look for visiting scientists in the logbooks. There's a procedure you can go through, and you're trying to gather information. It takes a while. And you need the right people doing it. People with a suspicious mind.
And you need the records, though, right?
And you need the records.
And you need access to all the scientists in the lab itself. Besides the
you would do interviews with them. Now you would expect some wouldn't be there, so you would try to find them.
Dr. Yan and others have said that this is man enhanced. I know initially when you heard about that, you were not a fan. Is there a possibility that this is not 100% natural and that this is man-enhanced. I'm not saying it's part of a weapons program, but it's something that was in a gain-of-function experiment or something that got out. Do you believe today it's potentially man-enhanced?
Do I believe personally? No.
And why is that?
None of it makes sense. Is it a gain-of-function experiment that got loose? Again, I don't think there's definite evidence for that. But one thing I've learned in medicine, anything is possible. You can't. Never is never, never.
Well, I mean, the one thing that kind of leads us to question this, Stephen, you said it yourself, right? If you wanted to clear your reputation, you would clear your reputation. And people are accusing them of having done some experiments. And we know, for example, these Chinese labs have been kind of, as Dr. Yan had said, kind of a Pandora's box of experimentation that we're not allowed to do in the West because they don't have the same kind of oversight.
We've done gain-of-function.
No, I'm saying we have, but we do it with much more oversight. I mean, you saw the shutdown of the lab in Wisconsin for some relatively minor problems compared to what we've heard has come out of the Chinese labs.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to talk to
let's go to break, and we're going to come back and let you two go at it. Okay, hashtag War Room Pandemic. Want to go to the live stream? Want to hear your comments, observations? We're going to get more into politics in the next hour. We've got some new federal state also protests around the world. We're going to go to Japan and Taiwan today. Breaking news on Nikki Lum Davis, I guess, pled guilty overnight. Big breaking news on all the Milesguo situation. She's pled guilty. In that whole situation, trying to get him out of the United States. So a lot breaking on the border of India, and which we've been all over. Dave Ramaswamy and the team, the border of India, Chinese-occupied Tibet, and China, the PLA is, and they've got an editorial in the Global Times that says, hey, India, we will crush you. So they're not, this thing gets closer to kinetic and away from economic and from information. And there's a lot on information. Peter Navarro's all over the place on shutting down these Chinese companies. We're going to turn with Dr. Stephen Hatfield on War Room Pandemic in a moment.
Brett Favre, legendary quarterback. Jerry Rice, legendary wide receiver.
You ready for your weekly meeting?
Yeah, we're ready.
Let's do this.
Let's stack the deck.
When legends play, they wear Copperfit Advanced Back Pro. Copperfit's best-selling compression back support just got better with new double-band adjustable supports for customizable compression when you need it most.
Since I put this on, I feel so much better. The core is the most important thing. To know that I'm stabilized here. Whatever I'm doing, I can give it 100%.
4 built-in stabilizing supports designed to improve posture and help reduce lower back stress and strain.
You have back pain, and it's affecting your everyday life. You do something. If you can find something to help you get back out and be active, like Copperfit, go for it. Absolutely. Do not give up.
A high-performance compression fabric infused with the powerful properties of copper, 360-degree flexible mobility, and lightweight, durable construction.
Nothing more painful than having back pains. If you're aching, if you feel like you can't work out anymore, you can. And that's with Copperfit.
Yeah. It's for all of us who still want to be active, still want to compete.
Way to go. That's what I'm talking about. Man, this really does feel good. It feels to me like the fountain of youth.
Copperfit's best-selling back support just got bigger, badder, and better. Or call 1-800-944-5851. Or on the web at advancedbackpro.com. Get yours now for only $19.99.
This does feel good.
That's what I've been saying.
You think it was fair?
It was fun.
Play for the love of the game.
Copperfit, live limitless.
This is the kind of card that has America talking. With it, people with Medicare are getting all-in-one coverage for their doctor visits, hospital care, prescription drugs, and more. This kind of insurance, called Medicare Part C, may also cover dental care, eyeglasses, hearing aids, fitness programs, vitamins, even healthy meals and rides to the doctor. With this kind of coverage, you do not need a Medicare supplement insurance plan. You will access your benefits through your Medicare Part C plan for one low and oftentimes $0 monthly plan premium. You deserve to get the most from your Medicare benefits. Call now for free information that may help you get more coverage for less money. There is no obligation to enroll, whether for yourself or someone you love. Call the number on the screen now. Call now.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
This is Jack Maxey sitting in the captain's chair here with Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon. We've got Vish Burra keeping us in line, and we've got Dr. Hatfield back in the studio. I know many of our fans have missed Dr. Hatfield. He's one of my...
Wow.
That was a Freudian slip there.
Oh.
He's one of my heroes here, and he was my wingman early on in this, so it's really happy to have him back. We've been involved in a lot of discussions over the months, and he's kind of been giving me a heads up. And he was one of the early people to bring to my attention hydroxychloroquine as a potential early use against COVID-19. So I'd like to go into that a little bit. For example, Dr. Hatfield, we've had Dr. Risch and Dr. Zelenko on the show, and both of them have said, and really it's a dramatic number when you think of the number of dead, both of them have said clearly that if we had begun a hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, zinc regime early on with this 75-year-old drug that really is quite safe in terms of its history of use, that we could have reduced deaths in the United States by anywhere between 70 and 80%. Is that a legitimate number in your mind,
Yeah,
Dr.
that's
Hatfield?
quite legitimate. It would have had to have been compounded with basically the National Pandemic Plan. It would be a community outreach. Look at India. Look at the slums around Mumbai. The population density. It was a disaster waiting to happen. By getting these community teams out, and some were going door to door, testing wasn't available, so you based it on the physician's discretion. Provisional diagnosis based on that physician's experience. And then you gave them hydroxychloroquine, a very quick 5-day course. I think they ended up with 12 deaths per million.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, what's frightening, I think India is about 45,000 deaths right now.
Yeah.
And it's 1 point...
Higher than that.
Okay, I mean,
but it's still a fraction.
But it's 50 maybe.
It's a fraction of what the United States
Exactly. It's sort of like New York and New Jersey combined.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the entire subcontinent of India. Also, what was interesting to me, Doctor, is we have these protocols around the world. You have the protocol in India. You have the protocol in some Latin American countries. And in Latin America, I say some, because, for example, in Costa Rica, the Chinese communist doctors are in there telling them to use hydroxychloroquine. And then you have them in some other Latin American countries saying the absolute opposite. So we've seen this kind of twisting of science, and it's not just the Chinese communists, it's Lancet. You and I have spoken quite a bit about the JAMA article where they gave people potentially toxic dosages of hydroxychloroquine to make it seem as if it didn't work, as if the studies were designed in a preconceived fashion for failure. Have you ever seen that in medicine in your career?
Nobody's seen what's been going on here.
I mean, it's frightening.
It's totally frightening. The peer review process is broken down. If you want to look, Panama just announced that they're going back to hydroxychloroquine. They'd stopped it. They're now back on it.
And they saw a spike as a result.
They saw a spike
just like in Switzerland. Switzerland was
and
absolutely
France.
Dramatic. And France.
And a number of other countries. If you look at a map on which countries are using it, it's about almost 2/3 of the world. We're not, the United Kingdom's not, Canada's not.
Yeah, God. So let me ask you one more question, because they've refused to give us an emergency use authorization for hydroxychloroquine on an early basis, which you yourself have said from day one, all the way back in February when we first started talking about this, the idea that it had to be done immediately. You got to get ahead of the replication of the virus. I was shocked, Doctor, on Friday to see that the FDA had provided an emergency use authorization, early use. Now, it's got to be for hospitalized patients because it's an intravenous drug, but for remdesivir, and offering it all the way down to infants and pregnant women. How did that happen? And we still see hydroxychloroquine as this evil drug. I mean, I think they have like 30% complications from people taking remdesivir for kidneys, liver, and other things. How's that possible?
When they pulled the EUA, the FDA pulled the EUA for hydroxychloroquine, that really left us nothing. Nothing. You can't use it in outpatients. Doctors are, but they face investigation by their medical boards or pharmacy boards because the governors put all these restrictions on it. Now, the governors are learning their lesson, and one by one, this is being rescinded.
I thought the guy from Minnesota was the most brazen. He said, now that we know the supply is secure for people with lupus.
What a load of nonsense. There was a brief hiccup in supply. Some very forward-thinking people in the administration moved quickly. There was about a 10-day little hiccup there, and then suddenly we had millions of doses.
And what's crazy, we know from our colleagues in Brazil, we have millions of dosages that we've actually given to other countries, and we're still sitting on our extras, and those countries are distributing and using it and saving lives.
Brazil's a very good point. Their political situation is very left-right, very much like here. And some states allowed it, and some states that were unfavorable to President of Brazil banned it. Couldn't use it. When the hydroxychloroquine went in, and the azithromycin and the zinc, in Para province, within 4 weeks, the whole thing was under control there.
This was the same thing. I sent you that article from Ecuador. Guayaquil was the city that they had on the front of the New York Times as the global example of disaster. They put in hydroxychloroquine across the city. They go to 0 deaths in 1 month.
Before Dr. Hadfield bounces, are we going to? Where do we on hydroxychloroquine? Is it going to be EAU on it, or is it not going to happen?
The request for a new EAU was turned down.
So it's not going to happen.
Not the way it is now.
Okay, we want to thank Dr. Stephen Hadfield, the author of 3 Seconds of Midnight. We'll get the cover of that book up in the next segment. I want to thank you, just like the beginning of War Room. Got to get him up to the kind of the intensity that we put. So we're going to take a short commercial break. When we return,
Quiet Giant.
The Quiet Giant. We're getting a lot to go through next hour, next episode.
Stay tuned to get a free pan from Granite Stone. Stuck on eggs, burnt on batter. You can scrub and scrape, but you can't escape the nightmare of your sticky pans. Introducing the Granite Stone Pan, the all-new durable non-stick pan. No butter or oil needed. Watch, we melted down these sticky candies in Granite Stone, and it just doesn't stick. We cooked a half a dozen eggs, bacon, cheese, and tomato breakfast with no butter or oil, and it just doesn't stick. Look, caramels, chocolate, and cheese. Unreal for any other pan, but not for Granite Stone. It just doesn't stick. Granite Stone will be the last pan you'll ever need because it's pressed from a solid aluminum disc for even heat conduction, then coated 3 times with our durable Granite Stone finish. Granite Stone is metal utensil safe and won't scratch. And talk about non-stick. This salmon cooked skin side down with no added butter or oil just doesn't stick. This steak is perfectly seared just like the pros. And because Granite Stone is oven rated to 500 degrees, we bake this upside down pan pizza to perfection, and it just doesn't stick. Fire Flambe Delicious Cherries Jubilee. Plus, it's PFOA free and 100% dishwasher safe. Call or go online to get your Granite Stone pan for the special TV discount price of just $19.99. Granite Stone is so durable it comes with a 10-year warranty. And with every order, you're going to get a Granite Stone single-serve egg pan absolutely free. It's the perfect size for personalized eggs, omelets, or frittatas that slide right out. It makes the best bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich quick. Yours absolutely free. We'll even ship your entire order free. That's right, free shipping. You get it all, an incredible value. Here's how to order.
To order, call 1-800-850-0237. That's 1-800-850-0237, or order online at buygranitestone.com. That's 1-800-850-0237. Call now.